Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. It's a Tuesday edition of the program. It is a New Year's Eve day morning program. We will not have a program tomorrow, folks. We'll be back here on January 2nd. So Happy New Year to everyone. And we'll recap a lot of all the games on Thursday. It is PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We'll have Buddy Martin here in just a second. And we'll have Mike Morgan, who will be joining us every Tuesday during basketball season. Works for the SEC Network. We'll talk hoops with him. We'll also talk college playoffs today as well. We missed it last night. Tremendous NFL game. Didn't mean a damn thing, but it's just a shootout. Two phenomenal quarterbacks, play callers, fun to watch. The Detroit Lions win 40-34. And now they play for the #1 seed at home against the Vikings next week. Let's go to the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. We're joined by Buddy Martin. You can hear Buddy Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday nights on your late night Gator talk shows around 9 p.m. Eastern time. What's up, Buddy? How you doing?
Hey Shane, hello. How you doing? Happy New Year to you. I guess we'll say that for a while. How long is it officially you're supposed to say Happy New Year? Sometimes people go like a month, keep saying Happy New Year. When do you stop saying Happy New Year?
Probably after tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
That's I mean, I probably don't say it a whole lot, period. Buddy, I try to stay away from talking to people.
Yeah, I know. For a
So,
guy who's in a talk show business, that's
yeah.
pretty you can do that. Then you were not that much of a talker as a player, although if people knew you, you talked. But gosh, a really good conversation last night on the program talking about that, talking about your break, your shot. And I mentioned to you, I wrote a column about, when you get your shot. And I asked you about when you got your shot. And I know the story. I think it's really a fascinating story, one that will go down in the narrative of Gator football history of a guy, because sometimes you don't get that shot. And Shane, you almost didn't.
Oh no, if I didn't, there's no telling where I'd be right now. I'd probably be a high school coach in Mississippi or something. Um, but yeah, it's all about being at the right place at the right time, getting an opportunity, and thankful that I got an opportunity and took advantage of it. And I was lucky to do it as a profession. There's so many people going into the portal, going into the draft, or declaring to go pro. It ain't gonna work out for them. It's just that's life. Uh, those are the best players in the world, and you got to find the right place, be there at the right time, understand how the business works, and if not, you won't be in the league long. So
Very true.
it's a
Well,
crazy business.
you did that, and not only did you do that, I mean, you found a way to make 11, 14 years in the NFL. Nobody does that, Shane.
Yeah.
14 years. And so Coach Spurrier always said the best job in the NFL is a backup quarterback. It worked for him and it worked for you.
Yep, I agree with that. Buddy, we got a question here from Barone on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. He says, Buddy, have you ever met Hank Goldberg? He was a staple of sports journalism down in South Florida and was around about your age.
I
Hammer and
did
Hank?
I did know Hank. I knew him, yes. I wouldn't say we were friends, but I was more than an acquaintance. I've been in his company. I was in his company many times. Hank was an inveterate horse player, as he knows. He played horses all the time. That was his thing. He hung out down in South Florida, and he was a really well-respected guy and a knowledgeable guy, and had a great run. Yes, he was one of my favorite South Florida guys.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, buddy, let's just kind of recap Gator football, put a kind of a bow on it moving into 2025. Ended up 8-5. Had a tremendous stretch at the end of the year. Um, I know you're very excited about where the program's headed.
I I am.
Should people be excited?
I think so. And I kind of worked my way in that last night in this column when you talk about getting your shot and use as an analogy of people who got their shot. You certainly, I got a shot at a journalistic level. Coach Spurrier had a shot. And the question would come, is Billy Napier getting another shot? And the answer is yes. And I ask you back, is he the long-term answer? I think we all want to know that. But at this point in time, given what he's done in the last 4 games with the big upsets during the season in LSU and Ole Miss, and then what he did in the bowl game, I think he's earned it. And I think if you listen to people outside the program, let's say take a Josh Pate. I was on a program with Josh Pate earlier this last week, and you talk to people who don't have any dog in the fight. They all think Billy Napier is on the trajectory, which is the popular word these days, is upward. That Billy Napier's got a hand on this, and the DJ Lagway is his ticket. And I'm hearing this said a lot. Florida is a team to keep your eyes on with the 12-team playoff next year. They have a tough schedule, but they should be one of the teams. So the answer to that is yes, I am bullish on him. I think he is the right guy myself, and I think he's the right play caller. We had a nice discussion about that last night, which we can talk about again if you want to. But yes, I think Billy right now, I'm not saying he's the be-all, end-all, but right now he's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been rooting for Billy since he got the job. I mean, first class individual. I think he's a good football coach. Some people like him, some people don't. Some people complain about certain things. If you watch football around the world, all fan bases are doing the same thing. So, time will tell. I think next year is a crucial, crucial year for Florida football. As I said on your program, buddy, I think we need to get to that 9-win minimum, uh, or at least late October the Gators need to be being mentioned as possibly making the 12-team playoff. Whether you make it or not, you have to be in the discussion, right?
In the hunt. Got to be in the hunt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
I agree. And I agree with you on the number because you got to show progress. 7 wins is not going to get it done because now we're at the 8-win level. You got to go 9. And I think if you look at the schedule, it's doable, but there is a brutal part of it, which is you played in the 3rd game of the season, not Tennessee. You play at Baton Rouge on the 3rd game of the season. And then you come home to Texas and you get Texas A&M. It's tough, but like you said last night, you start the season, you don't know who's going to be that great and who's not.
yeah, I mean, people talk about Florida's schedule. Is it hard? Yeah, on paper. It's not as hard as Arkansas and Oklahoma's, in my opinion, on paper. But again, our you don't know how these teams are going to pan out next year. So I would not worry about it. Andy's question on Facebook Live brought to you by Mellon. Shane, where does Ben Johnson rank amongst your offensive minds? He has an imagine. He is if he's not at the top, he's one of the top.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson is the 3rd-year offense coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Turned down a bunch of head coaching jobs last year. A lot of people aren't familiar with him. Young guy. He is as creative as anybody I've ever seen. Fun to watch. There's rumors that he will be the Jaguars coach next year. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Lions could lose both their offense and defensive coordinator off this year's team, but he is fun to watch.
Speaking of play calls last night, that run play he called, the quick sweep, the right.
He ran the hook and ladder for a touchdown last night. That you have to have great, great execution on that play. And it was actually covered pretty well by the 49ers. I'm surprised they pulled it off, but it is very, very nice. Greg says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Metal Law, Ohio State is complaining about Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. Yeah, I brought that up on Buddy's show last night about the offensive coordinator stuff. I still don't think the Gators are going to hire an offensive coordinator. And even if they do, there's going to be people on this show, on Facebook Live and YouTube, and on the Titan Lamar text line complaining about play calling next year.
That's part of being fans.
Everybody thinks there's a perfect game.
Yeah, right.
People complained when Steve Spurrier was calling plays, right?
So I was there. I know they did. But
yeah.
Shane, I want to just embrace for a second your relationship with fans. you're adored by many still as the guy who brought Florida respect to the Florida program. They've been a pain in your butt. How did you handle them as a player? And now you're handling them different. You have some smart followers, and it's those imbecile fans who don't have a clue who want to become a media person by having a Facebook account, and say, hey, look, I think this. We don't care what you think. You got 13 followers. We don't need to mix up those. But how do you deal with the fans? What's your relationship with them? And since you do a show with the fans, talk about that relationship.
Well, we have a ton of loyal listeners on this program, and whether I'm doing a pregame show before the Gator games on Saturday, we have tons of people that stop by. Look, I'm never going to treat anybody poorly. I remember being a kid. Archie Manning was my hero. Got to know him very well through my dad. Uh, I was one of those kids that used to send letters to Major League Baseball players,
Oh, you
football
did?
players,
You
and
wrote them?
they would send stuff back, whether they were sending or somebody. I would get these, bumper stickers, pencils, whatever.
Really?
I was a junkie when it comes to sports,
Who was your favorite
and
baseball player then, Shane?
it's probably Ozzie Smith. I played shortstop.
Oh,
And
did you?
when you live in North Mississippi, the Cardinals, I used to get all their games on the
Yeah.
radio with Jack Buck and stuff. So, but I grew up a Braves fan because that's all you could watch in Mississippi on WTBS. But, I did it with football. So I try to, I get that stuff in the mail all the time. I try to sign it and send it back, when I have time. So I try to treat people how I want to be treated. Now, when it comes to discussions, everybody's got their opinions, you know. You have your opinion, buddy. I have mine. The listeners have theirs. I'm going by what I've experienced and by sitting in meetings and sitting in locker rooms and all that kind of stuff. Try to go by what I've experienced. And that's why I do not think Billy Napier's a horrible play caller. It's a different style. I think that's what people need to realize is they don't enjoy the run first mentality. That's
Yeah.
what he does. And they're damn good at running the football. Uh, so I think you just have to kind of take it all in the context of how you want to approach it. But you know, everybody has their opinion in sports. That's the great thing. We're not sitting here debating
Right.
how to do surgery on a dude's heart, right?
Are we not debating the Elon Musk on how they
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So, but that's the great thing about sports. Um, Real quick, when Urban Meyer wanted to introduce his high quality tequila to the Gator Nation, he made sure to get it in the HBC and to his team at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Dorn's Liquors. Go beyond with smooth Los Landeros tequila. Go check them out. Get you a nice Los Landeros tequila at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Um, so I don't know if I answered your question, buddy, but
You answered it. You answered it. I wanted to say to you that I too was a Cardinal fan many decades before, and it was the same reason. When I grew up, there was no TV of baseball except the Saturday game with Dizzy Dean, Tony Kubek or whatever. And you could get AM radio was the only thing we had. And I had my daddy's great big old Zenith radio, and I could put an antenna up a tree, and I could get KMX in St. Louis and listen to. But now remember that was Stan Musial days, and the guy who was calling the games was not Jack Buck. It was Harry Carey. He was a Cardinals broadcaster, and he was so good at it. He's so in the way he embellished it on radio. Shane, I thought these guys were like gods. Then I saw TV that Stan Musial was human. I thought, wait a minute, this is something wrong here. This guy's human. I love Stan Musial. I love the Cardinals. I even loved old Harry when he was a Cardinal broadcaster.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, 31 Ember says bring Ben Johnson to Jags with Brunell as his OC and halfway competent GM. The Jags will turn around a year. Yeah, I do know Brunell will go with him if he goes to Jacksonville. If he goes somewhere else, Brunell will probably stay as the QB coach in Detroit. Um, uh, so David says that I have matured and become more rational as I've gotten older. He enjoys and agrees with him much more often. Yeah, well, you're not always going to agree with me, but buddy, I got a question for you regarding Gator football. Don't forget, we'll have Mike Morgan in the second portion of today's show. Um, from the players that the Gators lost, either in the portal, uh, that are transferring or going to the NFL, who's the one or two guys that you think are going to be hard to replace?
Well, I think they need some outside rushing help. I don't know what they got there. I do believe Kelvin Collins is a guy that had great promise, and he's a guy that was from Alabama. Florida got him. He was developing. I think, like you point out, the front seven is very key. I don't know if there's one person in particularly. Um, I still think Pyron, I know you don't necessarily. I just love the way he played. He brought a certain energy to the position. So those are a couple of guys I think they would miss. And I think, but it's kind of what life is. That's the way it's going to be these days. You're going to lose. I think if you tried to assess the pluses and minuses of what Florida did in recruiting in the portal versus what they lost, I think they at least broke even, if not better. So I think overall it's going to be that every year. What'd you lose? What'd you get? I think Florida right now is okay in that regards. They still need that receiver you talked about. They're not going to get Jonte Cook. That was news to me. You said you knew about it. He apparently, the receiver from Texas, is going to the Washington Huskies to be their number
Yeah.
one guy. So I
Yeah.
think right now that I think those front seven, anytime you lose those guys, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, we're going to really miss the two wide receivers, DK and Badger. They did a
Well, they're not,
lot.
but they're not portal guys. Nobody took on the portal.
No, but I said even if they go to the pros.
oh yeah, no, they're
Ron
gone.
says Cam Jackson. I thought Cam Jackson came on strong, but Triquez Bridges, in my opinion, he could do so much, and he had to take over at corner the last 4 or 5 games.
He's a good player, Shane.
He's a very good player. He's gone though. I don't know. I'm different than most people. I'm still concerned about our defense,
Mhm.
way more than I am offense. Um,
Well, who's going to be the coordinator? That's what I can't figure
yeah,
out.
that I don't know either. 31 in versus Shamar and Marshall, only ones that will matter.
Yeah, I think Shamar
Jason Marshall, we played a lot of. I think he's the one guy on that defense that will play in the NFL a long time.
Marshall.
Yeah, he's legit. I've said it for years. People don't like it because he gets beat, but every damn DB gets beat. He is an NFL corner if I've ever seen one. Shamar is gonna. I'm pulling for Shamar, but he's a little small, and to play linebacker, he's going to be a special teams guy, I think, in the NFL for a
He
few
needed
years.
to stay one more year. He needed to stay.
Well, he's been hurt a lot too, but I don't know if he needs to stay one more year. People talk about Carson Beck needed to stay one more year. Carson Beck's 23 or 24 years old. What's another year going to do? You
By
know?
the way, did you hear what Todd McShay said about Carson Beck?
Yeah, he said he needed to stay another year, right?
He hammered him. He said made a bad decision to leave early. He said I texted a bunch of guys in the league, GMs, former GMs, scouts. One scout wrote back to me, one word answer, foolish.
Yeah, I saw that too, and it maybe that's true or not, but I don't know what another year is going to do. But he's been a starter for 3 years or 2 years, whatever it is. That's plenty of time. Um, I don't know. And he's gonna, yeah. I think Georgia's better off with Gunnar Stockton from what my Georgia people tell me. They've been
Yeah,
wanting him. They
I'm
haven't
not
figured out. Well,
disagreeing with you on that. He's a
well,
physically tough kid. He really is.
right, right. But it's funny. We're sitting here questioning what Kirby Smart should have been doing as a coach, right? I mean,
No, no,
Kirby's,
I'm not questioning that. No,
well,
no.
I'm saying the Georgia fans
Oh, I
and
see. Yeah,
people close to the
yeah.
program that I
I
know
got you.
personally
I
have been
got you.
telling me all year that they should have been playing Gunnar Stockton
Yeah,
over him.
I got you. Yeah.
It's just funny to hear other people
Was
from
that
other
Buck Bellew?
programs.
Was that Buck Bellew telling you that?
No, no, these are uh, boosters,
Okay.
boosters that have really good ties
Okay.
to the program.
Okay.
Brandon says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, Collins and Jackson had a lot of potential in game. Those will be missed. Pyburn is not an elite edge rusher. Last one we had was Grenard. Yeah, I said this on the show yesterday. The last two defensive players that were they just demolished offenses are John Grenard, and that was under Mullen and whatchamacallit, the guy that everybody had, Grantham. And then the other was Dante Fowler
Forget John Grantham.
when it was Dante Fowler, who's still playing in the league.
Looks good. Playing
He's
well.
damn good. He was one of our elite players we ever had here, and he played under Will Muschamp. Think about that.
Wow, that's right. He did, didn't he?
We've had really not many great defensive players that can change the outcome of a game. So,
Well, I mean, why not? I mean, they just don't recruit them. They don't have the right kind of coaches. What's the deal?
I don't know. If I had that answer, I'd be the general manager of the Gators, I guess. I don't really know. Hey, buddy, I wanted to get to this day in sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life. Campus USA Credit Union. In 2017, the Cleveland Browns lost 28-24 to the Steelers to become only the second team in NFL history to finish the season 0-16. You know who the other team was that did that?
Jacksonville?
No, I think it was the Detroit Lions, quite honestly.
Well, they're good. They are a really well coached team. I really love watching the Lions play.
Yeah, they're so freaking good right now. All right, let's get a couple of these texts before we get you out of here. This is a text from Frank on the Titan More text line. What final grade would you give the O-line for the season? I'm not a big guy that does grades. I was fortunate. I didn't play for one team that graded me ever. Um, I would say they played pretty well. I mean,
All right, having said that, let me ask you real quick. Why am I hearing Rob Sale may be leaving and that they want him to leave? I don't understand. Is it money? If their running team is doing well, Rob Sale had something to do with it. Why would you want to dump Rob Sale, the so-called offensive coordinator, which we know he's not? But in the running game, it's so critical to what they do. So why is Rob Sale? I keep hearing Rob Sale may be gone.
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe he's got another opportunity somewhere else, or, sometimes coaches kind of part ways. He could be here. He may not be. I don't know. Chris from Cottondale, I like this text on the Titan More text line. I agree with you about Billy in the run game. I just wish we could throw more of the hitch and the fade. Too much slow developing deep crossing routes off play action and boot. I don't want to get rid of it, but why can't we just catch the snap and throw the hitch if they're back and fade, if they're up and mix in the slant here? Just think it would be simplify and be quick to get it out of the QBs. I agree 1,000%. Here's after 3 years of watching them call plays, I talk about all the time. They really scheme up really good job running the football. When you run the ball well, teams try to start playing you a lot of man coverage, try to get an extra guy in the box. Then that's when we play action and we hit the deep post or the deep crossing routes. If teams play a zone, we have trouble throwing curls, dig routes, corners, slants. I agree 100% with that. Because if
And
you
that's the
watch
problem
us,
DJ had last game. He in that they dropped 8. He had a problem.
yeah, he's his through all the games he played, he struggled against zone coverage.
Yeah.
And what zone is it's people have a zone. If you're looking over here, the defenders can cheat, and then he comes back and he throws. He doesn't see that guy. So, um, like I've always said, I think when you have young guys that aren't accurate, now DJ's a pretty accurate thrower, or have trouble reading coverage, you play zone. Playing man, you can stare at one guy the whole time and it's not going to change because everybody has a man. And your guy gets a step on him, you got an easy completion. So,
I think the first time I saw a zone was when Auburn ran it against John Reeves.
yeah, and he threw 9 interceptions.
9 picks, 9 in one game.
Yep. Yep. He threw a lot. And I was on pace to break that record against Mississippi State. I only threw 5.
No,
And I remember John Reeves. John Reeves was on the staff.
yes, he was.
And
What did you say?
I remember I threw like 2 early in the game, but the last 3 came on the last 3 drives. They were tip ball. It was just a disaster. We couldn't block them. But he said something so funny to me when I came to the sideline. He's like, "You're on pace. You're on pace. Good thing the game is ending." John Bob. I love John Bob.
I like John. I knew John from the time he was a player, and I really loved him. He was a hell of a quarterback, by the way.
Yeah. People forget that Danny and Terry Dean threw 7 interceptions. the following year at Kentucky, and we still won the game.
I remember that. Yes, you're
7.
right. They did.
Now, you think people were bitching and complaining about the play calling?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think they were. Yeah.
So, all right, buddy, before we get you out of here, the playoffs,
Yeah.
we're going to talk a lot with Mike Morgan about the playoffs. First games tonight, Boise and Penn State, and all the other 3 are tomorrow. Who you like in those games?
Well, we got the Fiesta Bowl. Remember the Fiesta Bowl? Florida had a disastrous there. Penn State, Boise. I know you like Boise. A lot of people do like Boise. I don't. I don't love Penn State, but I like Penn State, and I take Penn State there. The Peach Bowl. I like they're playing the bowl games. Texas and Arizona State. Your coach likes Arizona State a little bit here. I'm not saying he thinks they're going to win. I'm going to go Texas there. Rose Bowl. Ohio State and Oregon. How good is Ohio State? We don't know, and they don't know. I wouldn't be surprised here if Ohio State did knock off Oregon. And the Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame and Georgia, I go with the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then obviously basketball goes undefeated in non-conference play, and they crank up SEC play Saturday at Rupp Arena against the Big Blue Nation. And week in and week out, it's going to be brutal. I think minimum 12 teams are going to make the tournament, possibly 13. It's just going to be a grind every freaking game.
Go back to back to back with ranked teams. Start boom, boom, boom.
Well, everybody's ranked, buddy. That's the problem.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, pretty much.
They're playing the number 1 team twice in the first 31 days.
Yeah, I think there's 8 or 9 SEC teams ranked, so it's going to be tough. Buddy, good stuff as always. Happy New Year to you, my friend, and we will talk to you next week, and we'll be in 2025.
Thank you, Shane.
All right, that is Buddy Martin. Join us on the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. We're going to take a quick timeout. Come back. We'll be joined by Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. We're going to talk a little college football playoffs and obviously SEC basketball. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Crime Prevention Security System, Titan MRI, Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Bishop's Pitmaster Barbecue, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila. Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Cogent Bank, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Signs, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, Nest and Wow, MG&A Wealth Management. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook and YouTube. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. To become a sponsor, call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Unleash the Inferno.
The best New Year's Eve party is Advisors Rooftop in Celebration Point. Ring in 2025 and party with DJ Santos and dance away the last of 2024. We'll have a selection of Spurrier's favorite dishes, hors d'oeuvres, sparkling wine pairings, cocktails, and the most fun you've had all year in the newly renovated, climate-controlled Advisors Rooftop. Go to Spurriers.com to purchase your tickets today before they're all gone. Celebrate the start of your best year. Advisors Rooftop. Must be 21.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Florida Cracker is a brand for original Floridians. Great food, southern hospitality in the center of the universe, Brooksville, Florida. FloridaCracker.com. Back to the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. It's our good friend of the program, and he will be with us all during basketball season on Tuesdays. Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. How you doing, my man?
Shane and my fellow pod uppers, Love you guys. It's been way too long. I look forward to being back with you here on a semi-regular basis. Lots to talk about and lots to be excited about.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's start. Tonight is a second round of the college football playoffs, Boise and Penn State. Let me get your picks on these four games, and then I want to get your thoughts on the playoffs as well.
Okay, sure. You want to go game by game?
Yeah, let's go. Who do you think wins tonight? Penn State, Boise.
I think everybody is going to pick Penn State, and I'll fall in line with that because I just think Penn State will be too much in the trenches for Boise State. Uh, Look, I am still an Ashton Genty guy, and I still would not be surprised if he put up another 100 yards. He did it against Oregon in a 2-point loss. He did it in a blowout of Washington State. He is not a product of schedule making. He is a product of nobody can stop him, even when people know that he's going to get it every time. UNLV with Barry Odom, they couldn't stop him again with a playoff spot on the line. So I love Genty in this game, and I love their coach, by the way. Spencer Danielson is a rising star. I think he's like 36, but I think Penn State's too much. I'll wait for Penn State to play in the tougher matchups before James Franklin does what he normally does and lose the big game.
Yeah. What do you think about Texas? I think Texas is going to roll Arizona State. Maybe it's too much SEC. I've seen Texas in person. I think they're the fastest team I've seen in years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if Arizona State has seen anything like them.
You're not buying stock in Scattaboo,
No,
gashing them on
no.
the ground. I mean, he is a heck of a story, and Kenny Dillingham, they're a heck of a story. That's your Big 12 Coach of the Year, with all due
Yeah.
respect to Deion Sanders. They were picked last in that conference, and they wind up winning it. And most people couldn't name two people on the entire roster. They're not playing with two top 10 picks in Shador and Travis Hunter. But I'm with you. I think Texas is too much. The other thing about it, like these teams, I know Texas lost the conference championship game, and people were worried about, well, what a grind that'll be. You still have, between the last playoff game, what was that, the 20th, Shane? And they'll play tomorrow. So by my count, I think that's 12 days between Texas's last game and this game. Like in the NFL, you play 17 plus a playoff span, and unless you are that one team that gets a bye, you're playing a playoff game every 7 days. So welcome to the big leagues, people. I think Texas will be fine.
Yeah. Then you got obviously Oregon and Ohio State. How you see that working out?
You obviously saved the best two games for last. Look, that this was an entertaining one. The first time out, it was another Ryan Day clock management. We've seen plenty of that here in Atlanta with Raheem Morris just not having any idea of how to use timeouts down the street. It's amazing, Shane. I know you've coached. If you're a head coach and you're not calling ball plays, you should be able to handle the clock and timeouts late in games. But no, I think it's going to be an outstanding game. I will give Ohio State an edge. I will give Ohio State an edge. I was very impressed with the way they did respond in that first round game. There's a little bit of like, you know what? We're tired of everybody crapping on our coach and talking about Ryan Day getting fired. So we actually kind of like this guy. So we're going to play a little bit harder, maybe. I'll take Ohio State.
Yeah. And then Georgia, Notre Dame.
Could be the best game on the board. Gunnar Stockton, for those that don't know, Gunnar Stockton is like, he's not just some random kid. Like he's a high recruit. He plays smart. He had one terrible pick in that game, but other than that, he actually was pretty doggone good. And I don't know what's happened to Carson Beck, Shane. I'll be fascinated to see where he goes in the NFL draft, because you're talking about a kid that was projected to be perhaps the number one pick. His stock plummeted this year. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for him. My point is, I'm not so sure that they take a big dip with Gunnar Stockton because they were losing confidence in Carson Beck and his decision making. To me, this game comes down to, can Georgia's defense, which is not like it was in 2021, 2022, but it's still pretty damn good, can they neutralize Notre Dame in the ground game? And that includes their quarterback in Riley. Can they do that? If they can, I think Georgia wins the game. If Notre Dame is able to just gash them, that's that's their MO. That's how they win games. I'll take Georgia. I don't know. It's not even an upset. I think the line's really close, but I'll take Georgia. Maybe it's a little SEC coming out of me.
I like the Dogs. I think you give Kirby that much time.
Yeah,
I think defensively, as you said, they're not what they used to be, but I don't think Notre Dame's seen what's going to be in those red
right.
helmets. You know what I'm
I
saying? And
agree.
Gunnar Stockton to me, I was telling Buddy, a lot of my Georgia booster friends, they've been wanting Gunnar Stockton since like week 2 to play.
Yeah.
They he has that Stetson Bennett in him, in my opinion. Just
Yeah.
knows how to make plays and win. So
Yeah, I mean, whatever the intangibles are, for whatever reason, Carson Beck did not have them this year. And there's been all kinds of talk. Again, living in Atlanta, well, we got a lot of Gator fans here, I promise you that. But we also obviously have a lot of Georgia fans, and they've been, well, it's the Lamborghini, it's dating the Calaveri twin, it's the 1 point whatever million. Like a lot of people think all that really clogged his head with stuff that didn't need to be there. I don't know. I mean, he does have a cannon of an arm, but that wasn't the problem. It was just decision making was terrible for much of the season.
yeah. Question here on Facebook Live brought to you by Metal Law because I want to get your thoughts on this because I've given my thoughts to our listeners. Mike, do you like the college football playoffs selection process like it is? What would you change, if anything?
It's a no-brainer. Great question, by the way, but it's a no-brainer to me that they're going to change the seeding. We're not going to have Boise State and Arizona State ranked ahead of teams that are clearly better with better resumes. That's a mistake. Just seed it 1 through 12. I don't mind the auto bids. If you want to keep the auto bids, the top 5 conferences get a seat at the table, which it's going to be a 14 to 16 seat table in a couple of years. I have no problem with that, but you got to seed it right. This thing was seeded wrong. It's part of the reason why we had the blowouts in the first round. We can get into the whole selection process. That's a whole show in itself. I think that's clearly needs to be tweaked as well, and people have to understand. Like you can't. We talk about this on the podcast. We made the analogy like caveman selection, like unga bunga, 3 losses more than 2, therefore 2-loss team get in over 3 loss. Like you have to be able to think above and beyond that. That's why you're on a committee. That's why you're sitting there with a bottle of Perrier in your hand and a recliner. You got to do a little research. And clearly, Indiana's path to their schedule was different from some of those 3-loss teams in the SEC. Like you have to be able to understand strength of schedule is a massive, massive undertaking. And I'm going to tell you right now, the SEC and Greg Sankey, if you don't tweak that, if you don't recalibrate and understand that it can't just be, well, 2 losses is more than 1, 3 losses is more than 2, and therefore no, you have to be able to look at one of these 8-game schedules is not like one of these 8-game or 9-game conference slates, and be able to decide based on that who is the more worthy team of getting in.
The Pouncey Twins provide all of Gator Nation with the highest quality liqueurs made by J.F. Hayden Craft Liqueurs. Find your favorite flavors at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Got Mike Morgan here on the Titan Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Okay, you just mentioned this is where everybody around the nation, everybody on my show talks about the blowouts, right? First round.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I said this, and my listeners have heard this. I don't know if you've seen these stats. I'm going to read them to you, Mike.
Okay.
Last year, first round NFL playoffs,
Yeah.
17.3 margin of victory. College
Right.
playoffs, 19.2. Here's what's crazy. The first round, when we had the 14 playoffs for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
the semifinal games were decided by an average of 15.8 points per game, and those were at neutral sites,
Right.
right? All right. So here I did a little research. Everybody talks about national championship games and all that kind of stuff. Ain't none of them, but about 3 of them been close, right? I'm gonna read them to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought I was. I know I took a picture. Oh no, here it is right here. Okay. We've been doing the 14 playoff for 10 years. Year 1, Ohio State, Oregon, 42-20. Now you had the next year in 2016, Alabama 45, Clemson 40, close game. 2017, Clemson 35, Alabama 31, close game. 2018, Alabama 26, Georgia 23, close game. Since then, they ain't been close. 2019, Clemson 44, Alabama 16. 2020, LSU 42, Clemson 25. 2021, Alabama 52, Ohio State 24. 2022, Georgia 33, Alabama 18. 2023, Georgia 65, TCU 7. 2024, Michigan 34, Washington 13. So in the 10 years, only 3 games have been close.
Shane, that you just went through the title games. Look at the semis.
That's what I'm talking about. The semis are blowouts all the time.
The semis were unbelievably lot. It was an absolute a rare occurrence. I mean, you're more likely to see a SUV-sized drone over your house in Gainesville than having a competitive semifinal game in the 10 years of the 14 playoffs. So yeah, and you mentioned the NFL. I was thinking the same thing. Like blowouts happen in the postseason all the time. That doesn't mean that the problem is the postseason. That's just the nature of the beast. Like games get away from teams. Teams are better than other teams. That doesn't mean that, oh, well, clearly the solution is to go back to what, 2? To go back to the BCS? Come on. The overriding what you were good with 4? Is that what you said?
No, I want 24.
Oh, you want 24?
I want the FCS model.
I'm not. To me, the sweet number is 16. Like that's I think that's where we're headed, Shane. And I think that would be an adequate number. And you still have, the gut-wrenching games in November where, for example, let's just say Florida next year went into the Florida State game 9-2. And that game could very well determine whether or not they're in the playoff or not. If you lost to Florida State at home and you finished 9-3, well, maybe you don't deserve to go then. But if you win it, you earned your way in. You still had a really good year with a incredible strength of schedule. Yeah, you lost a couple of games, but you're still worthy of a playoff spot. I'd like to see 16.
Yeah, 16's fine. Like I said, I have no problems with the playoffs. I do agree with you though. Once you pick those 12 or however many, you got to reseed them. I love the automatic bids if you win your conference championship.
Yeah.
But just because Arizona State won the Big 12 or whatever conference they're in now, they should not have gotten a bye. I mean, that's simple.
The reason they did that, I understand. They are clinging to every possible way of making the conference championship game still relevant, right? And especially as SEC fans, and of course, you got to play in the first ever and had your career started a little bit later, you probably would have been in that game all 4 of your years. It's still near and dear to our hearts. We don't want to see the SEC championship game just go away. It's not going anywhere, folks. It's sold out every year. The only one that is. The ratings are massive. It's an incredible moneymaker, and everybody loves it. It's not going anywhere. But to me, a simple way, if you want to make these other ones the least bit relevant, just make sure that the team that wins it gets to play at home in the first round. The team that loses doesn't. Just like in the NFL. You win it, you get a home game. You lose it, you're on the road.
Yeah, I agree with that. For some reason, Tim on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law, says Stetson and Carson walk into a bar you'd drink to if you played for Kirby. I don't understand that. I think Kirby's a very good football coach.
Not the Stetson Hatters.
No, he's talking about Stetson Bennett or something.
The Stetson Bennett. Okay.
Yeah. Let's switch gears. Basketball. We had somebody on here want to know, do you know if you'll be calling any of the Gator games? Give us that. And then, look, SEC is going to have probably 12 minimum in the tournament. It's going to be a war every Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday moving forward. I mean, these teams in this league are just incredible.
Yeah. Well, let's start to answer the question of your listener. I've had Florida once, and I'll have them 3 times in January. I'll have them at home against Missouri, at home against Georgia, which I think would be a really good game. Georgia's much better. Asa Newell's the real deal. And then on the road at South Carolina. So 3 times in January overall. I I've been around this league a long time. I've been calling SEC basketball games on radio or TV since 2003. The league has never, ever looked this good. This league right now, the hay is in the barn, to use an old cliche, Shane, because all those non-conference wins that Florida and everybody else picked up, and it wasn't just cream puff city, it was beating up on leagues like the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12. They all get into that net ranking, and right now, the net ranking is so high for everybody in this league that almost every game you play is a quad one. So you can't get hurt. Now you still got to go out there and compete. You can't go, 4-14 and go to the NCAA tournament. But if you're 8-10, you're a lock. If you're 7-11, you're a bubble team. And yes, 11 to 12 teams, as I see it, will get in the big dance. And Florida is as good as any of them. They don't have a bunch of lottery picks. That's not what this roster is. It's a bunch of really good college players. One particularly special in Clayton, an incredible pickup in the portal in Elijah Martin. He gives you everything you needed on both ends. And then just the combination of all the other guys. They've got bouncy bigs. They've got plenty of guard depth. They've got guys that off the bench that would start for 300 other Division I teams, and their style of play. The one thing about Poland, I will say, as good as he was, and I talked to Todd Golden about this when I was there, is that they had to kind of play at his pace. And he was more of a slow it up, let's set it up, let's be methodical. He wasn't the fastest guy. Now they're doing what really is Golden's goal, which is to be one of the most up-tempo teams in the country. And they can do it with the team that they have. It's a special-looking group. It really is. No one's going undefeated in the SEC. The SEC champion could easily be 14-4, but I think Florida is going to be in it till the end for sure.
Yeah, I agree. They have the makeups to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. I wanted to ask you about Kentucky. I've watched Kentucky play a few times. I just think it was a blessing for the Big Blue Nation that John Calipari wanted to step away, because I think Mark Pope's an unbelievable coach, and I just love the way they play.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm crazy, but what do you think about Kentucky now?
I think it's a great story. I think Mark Pope is kind of what they needed. And look, I'm not saying Cal doesn't do some great things at Arkansas. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery. Sometimes that voice from a coach, it no longer resonates. And clearly, Cal's, with a lot of Kentucky's fan base, it wasn't resonating anymore. All the talk about, look at how many lottery picks we have. Look at how the $500 million our former guys are making now in the NBA while you're losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That's not resonating with Kentucky and Big Blue Nation. So Arkansas got what they wanted, which is a major splash hire with an incredible amount of money and a sugar daddy in Tyson's Chicken. And then Kentucky, sure, they probably went after Nate Oates. They probably went after a bunch of coaches out there that are big names. But Mark Pope and the style of their play reminds me a little bit of the early Pitino years, quite frankly. Yeah. You remember the early Pitino years, they were coming off probation. He didn't have a bunch of talent. He had a bunch of guys that could hit shots, that played, that were well coached, and just outplayed you in spite of the fact that you were more talented. That's what Mark Pope's doing there so far.
Yeah. Florida victorious, proud NIL partner of the Florida Gators, joined today to help make Florida victorious. A few more minutes here with Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. Speaking of NIL, I wanted to get your thoughts on this Leonard Hamilton lawsuit.
Oof.
Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah. What else could go wrong in Tallahassee? My goodness. I mean, on top of, I know, right? Like, I'm sure the listeners to this program are just shedding a tear, right? Break out the handkerchief for FSU football and basketball. Yeah, I mean, basketball had already taken a hit. I mean, they have not been, when Leonard had it going, and a lot of those players mentioned in that story were part of those teams that really had it going. They just could never get over the hump. They were not particularly great in the NCAA tournament. I don't know how that winds up, Shane. I everybody's going to have to lawyer up. I'm sure they already have, but if it's promised, usually I thought all that went through third parties. Like, what's the
Yeah.
head coach doing making the promises? Don't you
Right.
have guys that do all that stuff? I don't even know how Leonard gets involved in that.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, before we let you get out of here, Dan says, Mike, does Florida go 2-1 in the next 3 basketball games?
So you got at Kentucky, break down the other two. I don't have the schedule.
I want
in
to
front of
say
me.
Tennessee. We got
Tennessee at
Tennessee,
home.
and maybe Auburn. I could be wrong. I don't have the schedule in
I
front of
don't
me.
have it in front of me either. I mean, I think there's a win that can be had in Rupp Arena, but it'll be very difficult. Um, and then the next two, again, I need to know who the two are.
Yeah.
But to me, if you're asking who the best teams are in this league, Auburn right now is in a special class. I just had Alabama last week. They are very loaded as well. And of course, getting Sears to come back another year, that's massive for them. So, I mean, I think Auburn and Alabama and Florida and
Tennessee.
Tennessee, those are the top 4 teams. But I'm going to tell you right now, that next tier of the next 8 teams or so, any one of them can beat you home or away. They're all that good.
Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas are the next 3 games.
I'm assuming Tennessee's at home.
Yes. I
And
think
then
Arkansas is on the road as well.
Yeah, if you can get 2-1 during that stretch, that's a win to me. That's a win to me because that is a hell of a brutal start to the schedule. I mean, you need to sprinkle in as deep as this league is. If you take the bottom 4 teams compared to that, it's night and day. So yeah, I would gladly take 2-1. We all know no one's going undefeated this year. So take the 2-1. At that point, you're 15-1. You're still a top 10 team, and you've got a lot of games that you're still going to win on that schedule. It could be a really special year in Gainesville with that roster. People have a right to be excited about what's going on with the program right now.
Who's the worst team right now in the SEC? South Carolina?
Well, statistically, it's South Carolina. They beat Clemson. Clemson beat Kentucky. So, I mean, I don't know. Like South Carolina got off to a rough start. They might have the biggest stretch, but everybody said that last year, and Lamont Paris and those guys made it to the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure what Missouri is yet. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. And then the other one I would have questions about. I have not seen LSU. I don't have LSU for a while. I think LSU would be in line for that. But again, if you are number 16 in this league, like nobody knew Oklahoma was going to be this good. Mark
Right.
Wise and I have Oklahoma, Texas A&M in the second conference game of the year. That's going to be like a top 15 matchup.
Is Oklahoma still undefeated?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, Oklahoma, Florida, and Drake, I believe, are the only 3 left that are undefeated. And nobody saw Oklahoma coming. They were supposed to be bottom of the pack in the SEC, but they have a tremendous freshman. Porter Moser's always been a really good coach. First time I had Porter Moser, Dane Bradshaw and I had him with Loyola in a December game at the O-Dome, and we're like, well, this will be over quick. Let's get our filler material ready. And then I watched them in practice, and I was like, "Damn, this guy's a good coach." Like I just watching what he was doing, and like this might actually be a game. And then, sure enough, they wind up beating Florida, and they wind up going to the Final Four. So Porter Moser's a hell of a basketball coach, and they got a chance to have a good year as well.
Yeah. Mike, good stuff as always, my friend. Happy New Year to you.
Same
And
to you guys.
we'll have you here next Tuesday as well.
We'll do it. We got to start arguing more, Shane. I mean,
We can do that.
Yeah, all right. When you and JC are on, you're like the old married couple, and I feel like we don't have enough tension in the air. I'll have a hot take or two to get you all riled up next time.
Sounds good, my friend.
See you, man.
All right, that's Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. Join us on the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Town. Ruzoger State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. Appreciate everybody listening and chiming in today. We will not have a program tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday, rocking and rolling. Happy New Year, everyone. See you on Thursday.